Ras Baraka is the 40th mayor of the city of Newark. His family have lived in the city for more than 80 years, but now he wants to move to Trenton. I should also point out that you're also a spoken word performer, but we're not going to ask you to perform. We're going to ask you tough questions about what New Jersey people are concerned about. So you want to move to Trenton from Newark. So one of the biggest questions that people in New Jersey have is mass transit. This has been a summer of hell, as they call it, for people who take NJ Transit. Of almost 2,000 incidents just in 2 months this summer. If you get elected governor, what are you going to do about it?
Well, New Jersey Transit is a little dysfunctional right now. They're using their capital funds for operational costs. New Jersey has not dedicated any funding for New Jersey Transit, so that's part of the problem. They can't fix the long-term issues that they have because they have no capital funds. They're using it to run the place, and we're debating in New Jersey how it's going to be paid for, whether it's going to be paid for by multi-state corporations or ratepayers, people who get up in the morning, working class folks, are going to raise their rates $15.
But they already raised the
15%,
fares. They just already raised the fares on NJ Transit. How can you make the people who ride the trains pay any more money?
I agree with you. I think that that is a failed idea, and then ultimately we need to continue with the corporate business tax to use that to pay for operating New Jersey Transit, dedicate money to capital funds, and begin to do the fixes that needs to happen.
You know, the irony here is that when you talk to New York City transit officials from the MTA, and you know there are complaints about what the MTA is doing with congestion pricing, they always point to New Jersey and say, guess what? They don't fund their mass transit the way we want to fund our mass transit. So I guess the question to you is, like, what's the best way? I mean, isn't there a long-term solution that needs to be worked out that would include some kind of dedicated revenue source?
That's exactly right. And people would argue, oh, you just put it in the budget. Like, it's a simple way, but ultimately you have to find out who's going to pay for it all of the time. And I think in New Jersey, we have a corporate business tax. It was cut. But I think that we need to use that, reinstate that, and begin to use it to pay for our transit in New Jersey. We have incredible transportation infrastructure in New Jersey. We have to invest in it. We haven't invested in it the way it needs to be in years, and so we have all of these problems because we have not really doubled down on our transit the way we needed to.
So if you did the corporate business tax, would that be a dedicated revenue source?
Yes.
One of the things I can tell you is that in New York and the MTA, there are literally dozens of taxes that are dedicated to going directly to the MTA. For example, 1/4% of the sales tax in New York City goes to the MTA. The stock transfer tax, 1%, goes to the MTA. The mortgage retorting tax goes to the MTA. There's dozens of them like that. Is that something that you think New Jersey should do in terms of funding New Jersey Transit so that we don't have this problem every summer and every other summer?
The thing about New Jersey is we've identified the funding source. People know, in fact, what it costs to run New Jersey Transit. That's exactly what the CBT tax gives us, you know, in the state. So using that to fund that would be the answer to this, and continuing to do that without raiding the funds to do other things, but to focus in on that and don't spend it on anything else but transit.
Yeah, but see, that's the rub. Everybody tries to raid those funds and use it for other things.
We have to be disciplined and understand that our infrastructure, our transportation infrastructure is important. That's why business come to our state. They come because of the transportation infrastructure, because of the port, the seaport, the airport, because of you know, all of the roads that we have that get you up and down the corridor very quickly. So that's why we need to invest in it. The train, the rail, all of that is incredibly important for us, and we have to continue to invest in it.
So while we're on the topic of transportation, you know, the biggest thing in New York City right now is the congestion pricing tax, which has been temporarily paused, but who knows what's going to happen later on. So if Governor Hochul unpauses it and you are the governor of the state of New Jersey, what would your response be? I mean, would you try to lure businesses to New Jersey? Would you try to find things for people to do in New Jersey as work-wise so they wouldn't have to come into the city? How would you deal with it?
Well, I think we need to do that anyway, whether there's a congestion tax anyway. We need to make New Jersey a destination all of the time. That's something that we need to work on regardless of that. But I would sit with the governor. Obviously, you need to. I think that should have happened prior to this because it causes a problem for folks in New Jersey who do not have transit, do not have a way out of there except the car. So it's almost putting a specific tax on those guys in Bergen County specifically, Fort Lee, places up there who are going to have a difficult time with this cost. I agree with the idea of cutting down congestion. It helps us. It helps us in terms of the environment. Those things are laudable goals that we need to be trying to reach. But I think there's a way to do this without hurting each other. And two governors should figure out a way to make this happen without making it a political mess or a political football.
So are you saying that you don't think there was enough coordination between
Absolutely not.
New York and New Jersey before this thing happened?
Yes, absolutely not. I don't think there's enough coordination between any of the agencies. MTA with New Jersey Transit, we just talk at each other, not to each other. I think the governors should really talk about bringing our agencies together and figuring out how to talk about transportation in a regional way, not just this New York thing, New Jersey thing. We get angry, you get angry, because the goals are laudable. These are not, I don't think they're unnecessary. Congestion is a real issue. The environmental concerns are very real issues, but so is the rising costs of living in this region and in New Jersey. And folks that live in the northern part of New Jersey have to pay an extra tax almost to get to work and to go back and forth.
And you said that's not fair?
No, it's not fair for them. Obviously, we have to figure out a way to address that.
So I'd like to change topics, believe it or not.
Yeah.
One of the things that people in New York are concerned about, and I guess in Jersey, especially in schools, is cell phones in schools. I wonder what your position is on banning cell phones in schools throughout the state.
No, I don't agree with that. I think people should have access to phones. I think there should be some rules and policies that regulate that. But I do understand, you have kids who need to contact their parents. If something happens, they need to contact their parents. In this environment with all the craziness that's going on, parents would be completely uneasy if children didn't have access or opportunity to reach out to them or call them. I was a principal, by the way, so I do know the disruption that can cause in schools.
So how would you deal with the disruption? I mean, kids are always looking at their phones. I mean, I have two kids. They're always looking at their phones, even when we have dinner.
Right. So, I mean, the best way to get them to stop looking at their phones is to begin to use their phones in instruction. Right?
Aha, what a novel concept.
Right. So we begin to figure out a way how to use the technology and use that as a part of instruction. Ultimately,
that's an idea we haven't heard.
Right. Well, I think that those are the things that we have to begin to do in schools. But also, there's also ways and devices and things that you can use to make the cell phone, not work during certain times or certain periods. But ultimately, I don't think the answer, whatever we come up with, I don't think the answer is disposing of the phone altogether. I think these kids need access to phones. And especially since we haven't figured out proper childcare. We haven't made childcare affordable, accessible. After school time, kids need access to their phones. They're walking home by themselves. They're trying to get in. Parents are at work. They need access to those phones.
So Newark has been praised for how you've dealt with the homeless problem. And one of the things that you've done is you've used old packing, crates.
Containers.
Yeah. And you've retrofitted them to turn them into lovely homes.
Right.
So is that an idea that you think is translatable around the state that would help with the homeless problem in other cities in addition to Newark?
Absolutely. I think, people are using tiny homes, all kind of things around the country. So it's not like a novel idea.
I mean,
we use containers.
They have 2 bedrooms. I mean, they're not.
We use containers because we're in a port city. We have access to containers. Container companies, we use containers. They're affordable. They're cheap in comparison to what it costs to build. We can build them in a relatively short period of time.
They're not expensive.
No, it's not in comparison to what it would cost you to build from the ground or retrofit something else. Absolutely not.
Is there land to put them in?
Is there what?
Is there land?
Oh yeah. I mean, you have to identify. We've identified 2 pieces of property that the city owns, and we've put 2 villages there that we call them villages, and there's a 3rd one called Resilient Hope that we're in the process of building now.
We'll have to leave it right there for now, but we'll be right back. We're back with Newark Mayor Ras Baraka. I want to ask you about sort of an anomaly in New Jersey politics. They've never elected a Democrat or a Republican the person of that party, in this case Phil Murphy, has served 2 terms. Are you at all worried about that New Jersey is going to suddenly make a move to be red because we've had 2 terms with Phil Murphy?
You know, the strange thing about that is that New Jersey actually has 1 million more Democrats registered than Republicans.
But they're Republican governors all the time.
Right, and what's interesting is the Democratic governors usually only win 1 term. And then the second term, you know, goes to Republicans, and they get 2, and then we get 1. That's usually how it's been going.
So Phil Murphy broke
was
the
first
record.
one. He broke the record. First governor, Democratic governor in 30 years to be able to do that.
So you want to break the record again?
Yeah, this is a whole other record that we want to break.
So let me ask you about this. One of the things you talk about is the racial wealth gap.
Yeah,
and you talk about reparations. Tell me your thoughts about that.
Well, you know, the racial wealth gap in New Jersey is pretty prominent. You know, average, a median wealth for white families is over $300,000. For African American families, about $17,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is tremendous. It's huge. It would take hundreds of years to resolve. At the base of that is home ownership, right? And trying to figure out how to create home ownership. And the reason why reparations is a real discussion in New Jersey is because folks aren't even allowed to say the word. So they say, oh, we could talk about the wealth gap, but you can't say the word reparations because
we just said it.
It doesn't, right. In New Jersey, you probably get in trouble. But it's you know, because I guess it doesn't poll well. But I don't think that's a reason for us not to have these discussions. And I think statewide, we need to be talking about what this means, what it means for the economy, what it means for racial justice, because I think, you know, people look at social justice as separate from economic growth, that you have to have one or the other, but both. I think you bring more people, include more people into the economy, that the economy grows that way. There are a lot of people excluded from the economy. This is what, you know, in the presidential side, what Vice President Harris is talking about, an opportunity economy. How do you create an economy that gives more people an opportunity? People that have been locked out for decades, centuries even. And I think the African Americans in this country have been locked out. Very identifiable policy, you know, ways that, and deliberate ways that have been done. So we're talking about how to undo that. Right.
So is one way to undo it making housing more accessible by giving people tax credits to buy housing, or just grants to buy housing? How would you?
That is one way.
How do you want to? What are your ideas about how you could change the wealth gap?
So I mean, housing is one way. I mean, you know, after World War II, you know, we began to, in the country, give people low interest or no interest loans to move into the suburbs. That is how the middle class was created in many communities around the country.
Can you do that
housing.
in New Jersey?
It's possible. I think we have to have the discussions about.
But that's not the only thing that would.
No,
change
it's not.
it.
It's not the only thing. Earned income tax credits, expanding earned income tax credits, expanding child tax credits, providing opportunities for people. In Newark, we did a guaranteed income. What would that look like on a state and a federal level? What would guaranteed income look like for folks who need it the most, right? And I would look at it the same way this administration federally looks at the 40-40, like making sure that 40% of all of the resources or the grants go into neighborhoods that have been economically distressed or historically left out. We begin to look at strategies that begin to put resources in communities that have historically been denied those resources and opportunities. I think that people look at this, they look at it in a very myopic way and don't look at it as a holistic way. Or they look at it as a way to exclude people from one thing versus the other.
But also something that could grow the economy in New Jersey.
This is a way to grow the economy, to help the economy grow. I think right now we've been thinking about in New Jersey, how do we bring people into our state? How do we bring businesses into a state, as opposed to how do we invest in things that we already have, people that are already there, businesses that are already in our community. And we do both, but I think we lean in on what we have access to.
But doesn't that require some new taxes of some kind, whether it's corporate taxes or tax the rich or mansion taxes, all kinds of ways that you could do it to raise money?
It absolutely does.
Or get the federal government to do it?
Well, that would be great, but yeah, it does. And you know what's interesting is that the state cut many of those taxes. These are not taxes that are brand new. These are taxes that existed at some point and was cut. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions of dollars removed from the budget to give tax breaks to the wealthy, because the fear is if you tax the wealthy, they're going to leave the state. But that has not happened, right? So
you think you could do some more taxes on people who have large incomes?
Sure. on the sale even of real estate above $1 million, $3 million. You know, the cost of housing in New Jersey and in this area is increasing tremendously. You can tax real estate sales. You can do all of these things that have existed before. It's not something that I'm making up. What I'm saying is that this stuff should come back, and we should think about it.
So you're really talking about a complete tax overhaul, or looking at a complete tax overhaul in New Jersey to look at all the kinds of ways you can raise money. What are the good ways and what are the bad ways?
That's right. And making sure our taxes are not regressive and punitive, and make sure working families and people are not paying more income taxes or taxes, period, than the most wealthy in our state. And when that happens, it's uneven, it's unbalanced.
So do you think there also has to be reform of the estate tax?
Absolutely, it has to be reform of the estate tax.
Like, what would you like to see happen?
I mean, right now, I mean, we need to separate out what that is, because I think it's too long and too wide, that we, begin to put it in portions, like below $1 million, above that, and then folks who are receiving stuff from their estate, we don't tax any of that. For example, we have a gas tax in New Jersey, right?
Yes,
they've raised the gas tax, right? But we don't,
nobody wants you to raise the gas tax.
Right, but I don't want to do it either.
Oh my God, it's a third rail in New Jersey.
Right, that's what they do. They raise the gas tax. They cut sales tax, but raise the gas tax, right?
So what would you do?
Well, I would leave it. I don't think we need to be raising the gas tax. I mean, at the end of the day, we raise gas tax, but we don't raise taxes. I mean, there's no luxury tax for people who are in limousines, or people who take it. We're not taxing the fuel on people in private jets, right? So we need to think about these things.
You have a lot of people who take private jets in New Jersey. You could definitely make money from that.
We certainly can. But I think the idea is that we have to look at this stuff in an equitable way. And do
across-the-board reform, not just like piecemeal.
Right. We have to look at it in an equitable way. We have to do serious tax reform. We have to do budget reform, too, by the way, to look at things.
Are you spending too much money in New Jersey?
No, I think the cost of living is increasing. Inflationary issues that are attached to that. We might be spending money in areas that I don't want to spend money in, or we can spend more money in one area as opposed to the other. But this whole idea of we're spending too much, I don't like that notion. To me is like, oh, we don't want big government, but I want government to be big enough to include everybody.
But you want to have wise spending. Wise,
smart spending. We just learned today that our rating, our bond rating, increased in Newark. It went up twice since I was the mayor. So there's possible to have and. I think we have this or mentality, like you have to do this or that. I think it's possible to have a fiscally responsible government, but spend money in the areas where we need to spend. That's called investment, right? You invest your money in areas where you get more return on that investment. We're not getting a return on investment, and I think people complain because the government spends a lot of money, but they don't see the return of that.
So we have about 30 seconds left. If you got elected, what would be the very first thing you do when you got to Trenton?
Reform the taxes, do something about our budget, and begin to put a plan in place around developing housing across the state of New Jersey.
And transit.
Housing and transit goes together.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it right there for now, but our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News, New York. We're back with a bonus conversation you'll only see here on CBS News, New York. So you're the son of artists, and you are an artist yourself. How did your upbringing shape your approach to politics? Did it make you do things differently because you come from an artistic background?
I would say our focus on art and culture in the city is pretty prominent and evident. And I think that's a result of that, of being in a household of music and poetry and jazz all day. I mean, I woke up to jazz on WBGO, went to sleep to jazz on they just let the radio play all day, right? And they had the huge parties with musicians and artists and poets, right? So I think that had a serious impact on me.
Do you have like a favorite station, a favorite artist, a favorite jazz thing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have my favorite jazz musician is John Coltrane.
Really?
Obviously. Yeah. I mean, I grew up listening to a lot of Coltrane, and I would say Nina Simone.
So your family has lived in Newark for literally generations.
Right.
If you could live any place else, where would you want to live?
That's a good question. I mean, I've never thought about living anywhere else except outside of the country. Like I would, live outside of the country, maybe on the continent of Africa, maybe in Ghana, somewhere like that. But ultimately, Newark is the only place that I ever wanted to live, right?
See, I thought it was sort of a trick question because I thought you were going to say Trenton.
I'm going to work in Trenton.
You don't want to live in Trenton.
You'll work in Trenton, yeah.
But you don't want to live there. I don't blame you. Okay, so you have a very busy schedule. How do you unwind from all the meetings that you have to go to and all of the things on your schedule?
Well, different. I used to come to the studio in New York. I used to come to the studio and do poetry and music with Jerry Wonder and a few folks like that, and eat some Chinese food from somewhere in one of these towns, these stores in New York, and sit in there and listen to music and read poetry. Do you get much time to do that now? Not now. I mean, I try to go to the gym and work out to help me relax a little bit. But other than that, I spend time with my kids and as much as I can and just relax. Yeah.
So who do you go to for advice?
There's a few people. I used to get advice from Ken Gibson, who passed away. He was the first. He's the one who told me not to have lunch with people. Just go by yourself and eat lunch and decompress and do something for yourself.
That was probably really good advice.
Super advice.
Do you follow it?
I do. I use it for the gym and eating afterwards, so I'm not bothered. I'm focused on that and not work or anything else.
And does it help you to decompress?
Completely. The days that I don't go, I feel tense.
Really?
As opposed to the days I do go, it's very relaxing. But, there are a lot of people in New Jersey a lot of retired elected officials and other folks, business folks that I talk to for advice, definitely.
So do you have a favorite family tradition?
Not really. Right now, my personal family, we like to go to Martha's Vineyard. Right, we like to go to Martha's Vineyard at least once a year.
We're in a very weird time in this country. There seems to be a lot of hate speech.
Right.
I wonder how you relate to it and how you think you could do something to change it. The atmosphere is so, even in the presidential race,
absolutely.
It's so ugly sometimes. What's your solution for dealing with it?
Well, what's interesting, people always, talk about they don't support this or they admonish people who say negative things about each other. But then our relationships are so, negative and so divisive that people see us in Congress and every place else yelling and screaming and fighting with one another, and the vitriol is very high. So we have to take that down some.
Is it possible to change the tone, though? I mean, and what do we have to do that?
Well, I think we have to be honest and transparent and understand that our ideology may not be as important as the practical or the pragmatic solution to some of these problems. We have to be willing to work together beyond the party. You have to be willing to work together beyond our ideology, beyond our religious beliefs. We have to begin to feel like we're in this place together. We have problems that we have to solve. We have to agree. We might not agree how these problems should be solved, but we have to agree that they have to be solved.
But also you're talking about respecting people's views, even if you don't agree with them.
That's right. Respecting people's, I say these people are nice guys, I just don't agree with them. He's just wrong, right? And it's okay. I mean, there are people in your family you don't agree with, but you love them. We're not asking for people to go out to dinner and hang out, but ultimately you have to have respect enough for individuals, really respect for the job, the position, and the work that you're doing. The fact that people giving you this to do, that you take in high regard to get these things done without, cussing each other out.
Sounds like a good one.
Yeah.
So, you've done a lot of things in your life. What was your favorite job?
My favorite job was being the principal of a high school.
Really? Why?
That was my favorite job. Because you could see the return on your investment immediately, right? The kids, what's going on in the school, you can see the impact that you're having and on families. Period. Not just children, on entire families. You can see the impact and the impact you have on that specific community right away, right away. And the kids love you. I mean, it's nothing like they're very loyal. We just don't have that, and especially in the political world.
You got that right.
Yeah, so
what was your least favorite job?
Wow. I probably. In my whole life, summer youth employment, cleaning up parking lots and lots. But other than that, I've been blessed to do things that I love. I was a writer, a journalist for the Source magazine here in New York when I first got out of college.
Did you like that?
I loved it, even though they paid me $100 an article. I was in the poorhouse, but I loved doing that. Yeah.
So I often ask my guests who come from other places whether, if you were going to play tour guide in Newark,
Yeah.
what would be like the 2 or 3 places you would want people to see, that you would want them to see to experience Newark?
The Kruger Scott Mansion will be one of them on Martin Luther King Boulevard, so they could see, the history of the city, what it was about and where it's going right now. I would take them to NJ-PAC, obviously, incredible arts place. The Newark Museum is probably the most underrated and museum in the entire state. It's beautiful. The exhibits are outstanding. I would definitely take them to the museum. Let them see the old Forest Hill, the old Victorian homes and the huge mansions that are in Forest Hill or even up in Ivy Hill. Let them see that the diversity in our city. People have this idea of what Newark is from what they've heard and saw in the press or anywhere else. And if you go and see these things, you would have a different idea about Newark's history.
Is there a favorite restaurant you take them to?
Oh yeah, right now, it's 2. I go to Swahili Village, which is new, across the street from NJ-PAC, but Adega is my go-to, down on Ferry Street, the Ironbound, old Portuguese, Spanish community down there, a lot of Brazilians, Ecuadorians.
What do you eat?
Fish, mostly. I'm a pescatarian, so they have an incredible sea bass there, or the halibut is always good. They have this codfish dish, I think it's bona brasa, something like this. Codfish mixed with potatoes and onions. It's all chopped up, little pieces like that. Oh, it's amazing. It tastes great there.
Well, I think I'm going to go there next week.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you at home for joining us as well.